There's so many creators out there trying to tell you to start a print-on-demand store as your ticket to easy money. And it's tempting to think that you could be sipping margaritas on the beach, relaxing while you're raking in the dough, right? Of course. But then why is it that so many people that get into print-on-demand are actually struggling to make money, and most of them will never turn a profit? In this video, I'm going to tell you about some of the mistakes that I made with my own print-on-demand store, why it failed, all the things I learned, because I don't want you guys to make the same mistakes that I did and waste your hard-earned money. I'm also going to share with you the things that I would do now differently if I were to start a print-on-demand store today. By the end of the video, you'll have some tips and tactics that you can use for your own print-on-demand store if you're thinking of starting one soon. Let's get into it. First mistake I made was that I didn't treat my print-on-demand store like a real business. I basically came up with a bunch of different designs and said, let's see what sticks. And I wasn't really sure who my target market was. I didn't do a lot of research on that. I tried my best, but at the time I just really wasn't very clear on that. I sort of made it too broad. And you can't do that and expect to be successful. You need to be niche specific. You need to really figure out who it is that you're targeting and create something that has a really good vibe to it that people of that specific interest or that specific age group or whatever your niche market is can relate to and they want to be part of. The second mistake that I made was that I didn't have a lot of designs in my store. So I was really lacking on the different options and variety that my store had. And this was partially because I was learning Adobe Illustrator and I was doing the designs all by myself. So I thought it'd be interesting to challenge myself and be able to do the designs on my own as opposed to outsourcing that. But then what happened was I was very limited in the designs that I could create, and ultimately this sort of made the store itself not do very well. So a lot of the top Etsy sellers end up putting a lot of listings on their store. So they'll have, 500 listings sometimes. And then maybe like 5% of those might sell in any given week. So if you wanted to have 20 sales in a week, then you would have to have about 400 different designs in your store using those numbers. So mine didn't have anywhere close to 400 designs, and that's one of the reasons why I think it suffered. So the third mistake that I made was that my product pricing didn't leave enough room for the cost to acquire the customer. So what I mean by that is that my print-on-demand shirt from the supplier cost $12 to $16, depending on which shirt it was. My competitors were selling their shirts on Etsy for $18 to $25 US, and that included the shipping costs. So they would say free shipping because Etsy prioritizes sellers who include the shipping in the actual cost of the shirt. The cost to acquire the customer for me was around $6 or $7. So by the time you have the shirt, which is $12 to $16, plus the cost of the marketing, $6 to $7, add on the shipping costs on top of that, I was basically at a loss on each individual shirt. So it really just didn't make any sense in terms of the amount of profit that I was left with. Number 4 is that my designs really weren't competitive or unique, and I underestimated how hard it would be to stand out on the Etsy platform. Trying to learn Adobe Illustrator was a really interesting thing to do, I guess. But in hindsight, it would have made more sense for me as a beginner to actually outsource that cost of the design to somebody on Fiverr or some graphic design expert who had better skills, who could come up with better designs. My designs probably would have performed better. But because I was using my own skills to do this, I was limited in terms of what I could actually create, and it ended up being fairly mediocre, kind of average designs, and was really difficult for me to stand out amongst the crowd. So with all these mistakes that I made, what would I do differently now? Well, I want to share some of the things I would do differently that you guys can start implementing right now to see way better success in your print-on-demand store. Stay tuned, guys, you don't want to miss these. So my first tip is that you should create a Shopify store instead of an Etsy store. A lot of the top Etsy sellers end up uploading tons and tons of things on a daily basis, uploading designs constantly, and then they end up with a catalog of hundreds of designs. So that can kind of be exhausting, and you can burn out pretty easy with that. Instead of throwing up a whole bunch of designs and hoping that only a small percentage of those sell, having your own website or your own store on Shopify is going to be a better way of actually generating more of a brand, a business, and then using the power of social media and driving traffic to your website from there, using ads or creating an actual profile and organically doing it, that's going to be better than trying to compete with all the thousands of sellers on Etsy in the same niche or the same space. The other thing is that you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about something happening to Etsy, them changing their revenue model, or suddenly something happens with them, and then you're totally reliant on Etsy for your revenue. It's better to have revenue coming from your own store because you don't have to worry about Etsy changing anything or anything that could possibly ruin your livelihood down the road. So I highly recommend setting up your own Shopify store. That's what I would do today if I was doing a print-on-demand store. The second thing that I would do is that I would find a product with a higher perceived value. So what do I mean by this? Well, I was telling you earlier about the fact that the t-shirts didn't leave enough of a margin for me to acquire the customer. So I would find products that have a lot better margins so that I would be good with having a good amount of buffer in between so that I would be able to pay for ads and make sure that I'm spending the amount of money I need to acquire the customer. So some examples of some higher margin print-on-demand items would be things like canvas art, jigsaw puzzles seem to have a higher margin, car seat covers, hooded blankets. These are items that you could buy for a certain amount of money, and then when you actually turn around and sell it, there's a good amount of buffer in there so that it should leave enough money for marketing costs. So that's what I would do. Number 3 is that I would really try to focus on getting people to buy multiple items from my site at one time so that you're really bringing down the marketing costs. So if it costs you $7 to bring somebody to your store, then if they buy 3 or 4 different items, now that cost per item has really reduced. So trying to make some deals or some promotions where buying multiple items would be an advantage for the customer, so incentivize them to do that. That's something I would focus on to really help to bring that marketing cost down even further. Number 4 is I would figure out what makes my product unique. So what is it that would make my product stand out from the rest and really make somebody really want to buy that? So niching down is really important when you're thinking about this. So something like the outdoors, somebody who's into the outdoors, let's say I wanted to do something like that. Or maybe it's going to be catered towards people that love traveling, whatever my product is, but kind of figuring out who your target market is and what niche you want to get into, and not worrying about being so broad that you're trying to kind of capture everybody. But by capturing everybody and being too broad, you're basically speaking to nobody. If you want to have the highest chance of success, then you really need to be clear and specific on who it is that you're trying to target. Number 5 is that I would really try to find a great graphic designer to help me come up with some amazing designs that are going to really entice people to buy. And this is super important because most people see with their eyes, and that's how they make their decisions, especially online where you can't touch the piece of clothing or whatever it is, the article that you're trying to sell. It's all very visual. So if you have a good design, then people are going to want that item that much more. So I'd find a designer that I think has great designs, and I would not be afraid to spend money on this. This is where I would really focus on spending, and I would try to do a lot of different designs so that I could really test them out and see what's resonating and what's not. So not skimping out on spending on the design part of it is something I would definitely do next time if I were to do my own print-on-demand store today. And number 6 is that I would focus on becoming a really good marketer, because people that succeed in print on demand are excellent at marketing. So really leveraging social platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook to really drive that traffic to the store. And then trying to think about maybe creating an email list down the road when people do come to your website, offering them some kind of discount and then getting their email in exchange so that you can try to get some more business out of that customer so that you're really reducing the marketing costs. Because the more items that one customer buys from your store, of course, the lower your marketing costs would be. I would even take courses online, like just trying to figure out how I can best get that traffic to the store and become really good at that and understanding how to reduce your ad costs over time as well. Because the idea is that it might start out as being pretty high and then it's supposed to come down from there if you're doing all things the right way. So that's it, guys. Remember, you're creating a business, so think of it as a long-term thing as opposed to just a short-term play to generate a few couple bucks. But thinking of it as like a long-term business is super important. You want to build something that has an awesome vibe to it, that people really want to be part of, something that resonates with other people. Spend a lot of time trying to figure out who your niche is going to be, what your niche is going to be, who your target market is, what their interests are, what their pain points are, what they want. You want to focus on products that have a higher perceived value so that you can make sure that there's enough margin in there so that you can spend some money on marketing, because you're going to need to spend money in order for that to work, in order for people to know about the products. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Are you going to be starting a print-on-demand store in 2023? Are you going to be using some of the tips in this video that I talked about so that you don't end up going through the same things that I went through? I'd love to hear from you. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I have lots more amazing content coming up, and it would mean the world to me if you gave it a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.